Charlie Kirk, he committed in their eyes the greatest sin of all, blood libel, right? Because he took their money for years. He didn't build that organization up from scratch. He didn't do it. And he wasn't living poor. I get all these messages how poor he was living, like a monk, sacrificing into martyrdom to rescue everybody. He's a millionaire. Look at his home. Photos of his mansions have been put online. I mean, the guy was very, very wealthy, Charlie Kirk. He was taking the money from them and from the Zionists, and he was championing their cause, right? Alongside, for a time, people like Ben Shapiro, right? The base in the United States is turning against the Zionists. That's clear. And now they're getting panicked. And they're panicked. And like Charlie Kirk was a major force, a major influencer that they built up. And then Pinocchio starts getting a mind of his own. What would you do with that? You can't let that guy who knows so much and who has so much influence, you can't just start arguing with him. That'll make that side even stronger, right? So how are you going to treat this? They must have had, a decision cycle of, should we do it quietly? Should we do it, allegedly Netanyahu offered him money directly and he didn't take it apparently. I don't know what's true or what's not, but I know how they operate. That's definitely how they would have done it. They would have offered money. It would have been silver or lead, which is the oldest thing in the book, that didn't just come from Pablo Escobar. That's an old thing. You can take my silver or you can take my lead. You can take my gold or you can take the sword on your neck, right? And so that's it. And so he apparently did not take that. He'd been taking it for years. And now he knows all the inside scoop. He's next to President Trump. They're that close. And keep in mind, this is all part of the same ecosystem. These aren't disparate parts. I mean, they're at the same parties. They're in the same offices. They're flying on the same jets together. We've been fooled on 9/11. We've been fooled on the USS Liberty. We've been fooled on October 7th. That was a clear staked goat and green flag attack. We've been fooled on the death jabs after the October 7th event. The murder of more than 1,000 Israelis, clearly sponsored by the Zionists, clearly using the patsy as Hamas, right? They needed those hostages as casus belli, cause for war, to clear Gaza, right? There's a lot of gas off Gaza, huge amount of wealth in Gaza, and they want Suez Canal. Eventually, Egypt's going to be in war, right? That's clear, because eventually they're going to make it go for the Suez Canal. I don't know if it's in 1 year or 15 years or 20 years. Eventually, somebody's going for that canal, right? That's just the way these things go. Likewise with Panama, right? That's why I spend so much time there, right?
Michael, great to have you back on again. A lot has been going on around the world.
Thanks for having me on. I'm in Thailand now for meetings, and we've left Japan for a spell, and then may head up to Nepal because of the situations up there. But you see, the situation obviously that occurred with Charlie Kirk, obvious assassination. Well, I don't know if he's dead or alive. I think he's probably dead, but who knows? Because we know that we're lied to 24/7, and we know that we're being lied to by people that are expert at lying. And even they lie so boldly, like in professional wrestling, that it doesn't, for the vast majority of people, it doesn't have to be objectively, obviously true. They just need a lie that's good enough to make them feel good about going, okay, I can believe you because you've told a good enough lie, even though it's obviously fake, like professional wrestling, kayfabe, which Trump is deeply into. And kayfabe is the professional wrestling term, that it's actually fake. Everybody knows it's fake, but you go along with it. The human mind, interestingly, has a very difficult time in separating fact from fiction. We treat them the same way in our minds, right? And so you end up thinking Bruce Willis really is that guy, right? Or Arnold Schwarzenegger really is the Terminator, right? Yeah. So if somebody plays the president well enough, he's like, or the king, if somebody plays king and everybody says, well, I believe you're the king, well, then he's the king because he takes on that movie role, and there you go. That's the way it works, actually. And it's likewise with this, whatever just happened with this assassination or whatever it was. Again, I think he was probably killed. But objectively, I don't know. First principles, I actually don't know. Do I think he was killed? Yes, I do think he was. Do I know? Absolutely not. And so, but who done it is a question, and this is a pretty interesting question. Who done it? I would. We're in a war situation. We don't have time to objectively, like with, let's say, the death jabs, the so-called vaccines, which is the wrong word for those things, death jabs. We didn't have time to analyze and look at science developed over 15 or 20 years, or intergenerational studies of who took the jab and who didn't. We don't have time. We're in a state of war. You got to make an intuitive decision with the information you've got. You've got to come at with the situation with your whole body, your whole life of research and experience, your best intuitive answers, and you got to come to a conclusion. Should I take the jab or should I not take the jab? Based on my whole lifetime of experience, which road should I take? Because this was a 1-0, right? You either take it or you don't. If we were to believe that the narrative is that we're all going to die and Granny's going to die if we don't take the jab, and we're evil people if we don't take it, right? But if you take another position, you might say, hey, they're trying to kill us all. And this is a psyop. That's the road I took, accurately, right? So you come at it with a full body decision. This is combat, and this is real combat. This is not like a lot of combat doesn't happen with rifles and guns, right? It happens with psychological operations. It happens with pharma. It happens with all kinds of mechanisms, right? Drugs, terrible music that causes people to disrupt their lives, that sort of thing. And so many people chose wrongly and they're dead, or they had no choice because they were young and they just had no immune system yet for any of these psychological operations. I mean, if you're 15 years old, you're going to have a hard time going against the sophisticated level of information war. Plus, you're dependent on people for your actual food, right? And you're small, and you just, so a lot of these young people, they had no actual choice. I mean, they're not even at the age where they're allowed to vote yet, right? They're not the age they're allowed to drive yet or anything, because they're considered children, and they had no choice. They were literally murdered, many of them, and many will probably are probably now infertile, right? Their lives have been remarkably disrupted, and the futures of their generation have been remarkably disrupted, right? To the point of it can be destroyed, actually, like erased off the earth. And so likewise, so we didn't have time when it came time for the death jabs to sit back and go, okay, let's do a 40-year study on the intergenerational effects of this thing. You had to make a wartime decision. Wartime hat, intuitive decision. That's a weapon. Don't go that way, right? And likewise, your friends never tried to confuse you, right? Your friends never, if you're, let's say you're on a Green Beret A team or something, the members of the A team are trying to speak in the clearest terms possible. That's why when you get around serious military people, there goes the electricity, but I still got some on. You've still got, are you there? I think we might have just cut off. Oh, we're back on. Okay. The electricity went off, but we still, weirdly, so I connected to a separate Wi-Fi on my mobile Wi-Fi. Okay. So the electricity went off in this place, but
awesome.
my light's still on, weirdly. Okay. All right. And some of the electricity is still on. So in any case, how far did we get before we cut off?
Oh gosh, we were talking about the jab and 40-year study and things of that nature, and it being obviously rushed and all that wonderful stuff.
Right. Anybody that's trying to confuse us is our enemy, right? So we don't have to know exactly how they're doing their tracks and trips, the tricks and traps and all that. It would be nice to know. Actually, it'd be very nice to know exactly how they're doing their tricks and traps. I mean, but sometimes we don't have time to obviously figure out. They could have laid traps that took years to develop, and we're supposed to figure it out quickly, like Rubik's Cube the thing. How did he get the rabbit out of the hat? You know what I mean? I don't know. But the bottom line is he's trying to trick me. He's the enemy. So we can encapsulate that very quickly. Like, okay, I don't know exactly how he's doing this. I don't know exactly how this ambush is set up, but it is an ambush, and that guy's the enemy, right? if you orient yourself like that, if you orient your behavior towards accurately, figuring out whoever's trying to fool me is the enemy, right? And so we've been fooled on 9/11. We've been fooled on the USS Liberty. We've been fooled on October 7th. That was a clear staked goat and green flag attack. We've been fooled on the death jabs. Who are the people that so hard? There we go. Lights out. I'm in the dark. Who are, you can see they're doing maintenance here. So, but my Wi-Fi is still on. And so now my eyes are glowing in the darkness. There you go. So there we go. Some more. Thank you, Masagos. And so anybody that's trying to fool us is our enemy. And likewise, you can see what's happening now with the Kirk, whatever happened, right? The Charlie Kirk assassination or the Charlie Kirk, whatever it was. And so the people that are doing this, now, again, we don't have time. I see people now blaming the Chinese. They're blaming the Russians. They're blaming the Iranians. They're blaming Hamas. They're blaming everybody except the obvious ones who did it. And again, we got to get right down. We don't have time for, you got to have objective proof. We know Trump is a Zionist, straight up. We know Charlie Kirk was taking money from Zionists since he was very young. We know that they groom people to act these roles. We know that. That's just a fact of life. We know it. We don't have to continue to. In fact, those who accuse us of anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism, anytime we point out the obvious, are committing blood libel. Anytime somebody accuses us of anti-Semitism, anti-Judaism, for pointing out what the Zionists are doing, and most of the Zionists in America seem to be actually Christians. They actually seem to be Christians. And the leadership of the Zionists in Israel are mostly atheists, right? Like Netanyahu, he's a straight up atheist. And so, his name, by the way, was Meliakovsky, same as the guy in Argentina. Mele in Argentina, his name was Meliakovsky. Netanyahu's name was Meliakovsky. Maybe they are cousins. I don't know. But the bottom line is they come from the same tribe. And anytime that you call them out, they say blood libel. And remember, when they use the term blood libel, they mean I am now authorized to kill you. When they use that term, blood libel is the highest crime in their cult, right? There's no crime higher than that, than blood libel. It's the highest crime, right? So when they say you're pointing out that the Zionists, who are not, Zionism is not even Judaism, but when they point that out, that's actual blood libel, and they're saying, I can now kill you, right? Now look, Charlie Kirk, he committed, in their eyes, the greatest sin of all, blood libel, right? Because he took their money for years. He didn't build that organization up from scratch. He didn't do it. And he wasn't living poor. I get all these messages how poor he was living, like a monk, sacrificing into martyrdom to rescue everybody. He's a millionaire. Look at his home. Photos of his mansions have been put online. I mean, the guy was very, very wealthy, Charlie Kirk. He was taking the money from him. And from the Zionists, and he was championing their cause, right? Alongside, for a time, people like Ben Shapiro, right? And these are all lifted up. They're called talents, and they're called, once they're actually bought and owned, they're called properties. They're actually called properties. You don't hear this publicly, but I hear it because I've been behind the scenes on this for years, or back in the old days, right? I never took the money. The people that didn't take the money don't have big followers. They don't have big readers because we're mitigated. We're pushed into the shadows. The people that are going to take the money usually take it immediately, right? They take it right off the bat. If somebody's offering money, they start negotiating price, right? The people that aren't going to take the money, they don't take it. If they don't take it if they don't take the money immediately, they never take the money. That's a good judge on. And so when the people are, whether it's Zionists or anybody else who are trying to buy people, on the mice spectrum, when you're buying counterintelligence, you're hiring, spies or whatever, you use mice: money, ideology, coercion, ego. That's the acronym, right? Money, ideology, those who are going to take the M part, money. You offer money, they're either going to take it immediately or they're going to start negotiating price, right? Then they know that's perfect. They got you, right? They know you're going to take at least one of the cheeses. Well, Charlie Kirk, he was very young. So he was very young when he started off down this route. So it's good to get them young because, first of all, you can mold them the way that you want them. That's how it works. Play-Doh, like Play-Doh, right? And they use dough. and not only that, but you've got them for life, right? You can raise them up the way you want them, like a bonsai tree, right? They've shaped exactly how you want them. All the talking points that you want. Well, sometimes in the counterintelligence world and even in the business world, sometimes a business leader has a protege or somebody that's their best assistant, and that best assistant really eventually wants to take your organization, right? That's what it's really about often, right? They have a life of their own. Like Pinocchio wants to become a real boy. Likewise, in the counterintelligence world, sometimes an agent, if you ask these the case officers for CIA or whatever, they'll talk about, their sources who suddenly get a life of their own and want to, sort of take charge of what's going on. So then the case officer has to determine, well, how am I going to deal with this guy? Are we going to just try to keep him in the corral, keep him on the plantation? Are we going to just stop paying him? Are we going to go ahead and burn him? Are we going to actually kill him, right? And with Charlie Kirk, now think about it from the Charlie Kirk position. They got him early when he had no immune system to this sort of stuff. Next thing you know, he's living a very serious lifestyle, right? I mean, he's married to a beauty queen that, was associated with Trump on the beauty queen circuit, that sort of thing, right? I mean, the next thing you know, he's in the ecosystem. Lots of money, lots of on the mice. They've got the money, right? And the ideology, he seems to be aligned on that. Coercion, I don't know if they had it, but ego, he had an ego. So of the four major cheeses, at least 3 cheeses were there with Charlie, right? And now at some point, I don't know why Charlie started to change his tune, but he did, right? It could be because, like Pinocchio, he had he started to develop he had a conscience of his own. I mean, he does seem to have a moral fiber. He did have a moral fiber, right? He seemed like he does have a moral, or did have a moral fiber, not amoral, but amoral one, right? And so, but at some point, either his base, because his base started erupting. They were against the Gaza genocide, huge numbers of them. They're against attacking Iran. And where's the Epstein files? Where is that? Like, everybody wants to know, why is that being pushed under? And who is it being pushed under by? Charlie Kirk's best buddy and the Zionists. Because remember, Trump is a Zionist, openly a Zionist. When I said that last year on a podcast, they didn't even run the podcast until like 8 months, right? Ivor Cummins' podcast, he interviewed me in Buenos Aires, right? And I said, Trump's a Zionist. That was controversial at the time. I'm like, by the time I've told you, it's obvious. It's nakedly obvious. But now it's obvious to everybody. I mean, he doesn't even hide it, right? He's like openly Zionist. And again, Zionism is a political party. It is not a religion. It's not Judaism. Most of the Zionists in America do seem to be Christians, actually. And I think that's an overwhelming number, right? And so Charlie Kirk at some point, for some reason, started going off script, as often happens, in whether that be in the spy world or the business world or whatever. For whatever reason, somebody starts taking off with a life of their own, like Pinocchio, and now they have to make a decision. How are we going to treat this guy? Are we going to try to keep him in the meld? Because you're not going to fight him under your own roof. You're not going to do that, right? That doesn't make sense. In fact, everybody's going to be saying, hey, this is treason. This guy is committing treason. He knows too much about our operation. He knows how what if he really goes off script and just takes on a total, like Pinocchio, a total life of his own and walks off? We built him up to a huge guy. He's got a microphone. People do listen to him. He can do severe damage to us because he knows how the operation works. And so you got to make a decision. Now, if they could, it's very clear. Now, who's the most likely suspect in the murder of Charlie Kirk or whatever happened, right? Was it the Chinese, as they're trying to push? Now, keep in mind, I've written 3 books on Chinese information war. I've been all over China researching this. I've been warning about China for a long time. Thousands of times I've warned about China, thousands, right? But China didn't do this. That's obvious. It's obvious it wasn't the Russians. I mean, why would that'd be like the Russians destroying Nord Stream, when as if they couldn't just turn it off because, they built Nord Stream with the Germans, right? I mean, they had half of the switches because half of them were in Russia. They didn't blow up their own pipeline, but a lot of Americans think that. So who done it? Was it Hamas? Obviously not, because Charlie Kirk is trying to stop the genocide in Israel, or at least his followers demanded that he do. So Charlie Kirk is in a position of, I got a fork in the road here. My base is rebelling against my boss. It was base against boss, right? Charlie Kirk's base, those young people were rebelling against his very rich and very gunned up Zionist bosses. So Charlie Kirk is, which way is my ice flow going to go? This way, keep going the money and lose my base, in which case I'll become useless to them, right? Actually. Or I'm going to take a chance and go this way. That's what happens when you mob up, right? You mob up, you took the money. Hey, at some point you know what you're doing is wrong, right? You know what you're doing is dangerous, extremely dangerous, right? Like physically, obviously dangerous. So I think this is my intuitive guess. He had to make a choice. You can't take both of those roads because they are diametrically opposed to each other. And he went with this base because Charlie Kirk has a political mind of his own. That's my intuitive sense. Looking at him, he has a political ambition, and if he goes this way, he's going to become less useful for them because he's going to lose these guys anyway. And he knows that. He's a smart guy. So he's not going to have power with them unless he has power with them. So, he's obviously he can't have both because they're going away. So he went with them. That's my intuitive sense. He's a smart guy, and he knows because he was, radiating that he thought that they might kill him. He was saying it straight up.
The very day before Charlie Kirk died, he expressed that he thought he was going to be killed. He told these people, I think they're going to kill me.
So we know Candace Owens has been dropping bombshells after bombshells about this Charlie Kirk situation. In fact, she released some text just the other day. We covered this, where Charlie Kirk, 48 hours before his assassination, said, another $2 million a year donor canceled because of Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Jewish donors play into all the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. That was 48 hours before Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and TPUSA would not comment on it. They tried to pretend it didn't exist until she produced the receipts. And when she did, this is the new head of the TPU. This is what he said.
Started this show to address some of the things that have been going around on public, namely about a group text chain that has been made known and released by Candace Owens. And I just want to address it head on because, that was a screen grab that I had shared with people. So it is authentic. And I want to go into it because I actually am really excited that the truth is out there.
Yeah, he looks excited. If I was going to one adjective for how that guy looked, he looks excited. Oh, thank God somebody proved me a liar, and I was trying to cover this up. And son of a bitch. So why do I bring this up? Because Candace Owens has a new bombshell. And the new bombshell is 24 hours before he was assassinated. Well, here, I'll let her tell you.
3 people told me off record. 2 people who have this in a written communication from Charlie. One who is a Turning Point USA donor, and I would say very much one of the white knights in this. The very day before Charlie Kirk died, he expressed that he thought he was going to be killed. He told these people, I think they're going to kill me. Okay. He did not express that to me. So I am telling you this.
Oh, maybe that Turning Point USA guy's like, I'm glad this is out now. Yeah, sure. He was afraid. Sure. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love Israel. All right. Anyway.
Based off the testimony of 3 people. And I am saying this because I hope that these people who I think are good will be inspired to come forward with that. Again, those conversations I had were off record. I honor that. If I say it's off record, it stays off record. But I'm hoping that watching what I am doing and feeling the energy that is rising across the world for people who want to know what the heck happened on 9/10, that, you know, they will be brave and they will say, yeah, Charlie did the day before he died think that he was going to be killed, and maybe tell us, who is they? Well, for once and for all, who is they? Who is the they that he thought were going to kill him? Now, to answer,
I think I know. I think I know who the they is. I'll tell you who it wasn't. It wasn't Venezuela. It wasn't Iran. It wasn't Russia. And I'm almost 100% positive it wasn't a trans lover. What a convenient story, huh? The guy in love with a trans person is the guy who pulled the trigger. And but she's going to figure out who they are. And you know how I know she's going to? Because she said so. Listen to what she says.
if I found Brigitte's penis, I will find who killed Charlie Kirk.
I love Candace Owens. I think she's fantastic. Don't have to agree with somebody on everything, but we agree on a lot. And that's what they don't want. They don't want people on the left and the right to realize that you agree on a lot and that you share a common enemy. That they don't want that. They want you to keep thinking the problem is the other half of the country, not the oligarchs that run the country, but the other half of the country, the workers, the people who are are suffering just like you under these oligarchy. They want you to blame regular people, workers, and people lower on the economic ladder than you for your problems. Don't fall for it. We can agree on lots of things. People on the left and the right, that's what they don't want you to know, that we agree on a lot of things. We all agree on ending the wars. We all agree on free speech. We all agree on taking that war money and investing in our own country. There's many things we agree. We agree on a strong border, things like that. There's lots of things we agree on, and they don't want you to know that. They want us to keep fighting because it's called divide and conquer. And the more they can keep us divided, the more they can keep us conquered. Because if we come together, we can actually overthrow this oligarchy, and that's the last thing they want you to know. So great work by Candace Owens. What else do I have here? Here's one more thing. So that's 48 hours before Charlie Kirk's assassination. He was saying, I'm not, his Jewish donors were playing into all the anti-Semitic tropes that he could think, stereotypes he could think of, and he could no longer support Israel. 24 hours before, he said he was afraid they were going to kill him. And this is after he said after he said all this.
And Jewish donors, they have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of decoupling to do, because Jewish donors have been the number one funding mechanism of radical, open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies, cultural institutions, and nonprofits. This is a beast created by secular Jews. And now it's coming for Jews, and they're like, what on earth happened? And it's not just the colleges. It's the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it. It's like time for you guys to wake up and say no more. Draw a line in the sand. I don't care if you hate me.
Whoa. It's the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood. Whoa. And he's calling out his Jewish donors. I don't know. Well, who do you think the they is? I don't know. Who do you think the they is? A lot of people speculating it's Israel, again, because they have a long history of assassinating people that are inconvenient for them. And Charlie Kirk had become inconvenient for them because he was definitely the most popular leader and a charismatic leader of conservatives under 30. So he was more powerful with those people than Trump. He was more powerful with those people than anybody. And he had turned against Israel. And that's all it took for him to be afraid for his life. 24 hours before he was assassinated, he said, I think they're going to assassinate me.
Right. And they live in a world where they just commit blood libel on a daily basis. I mean, anybody that departs from them, we know what they do. Their magic wand is anti-Jew, anti-Semite. By the way, in information war, one of the techniques, it's an old technique. I don't know when it first started, but it's been used for many generations, is first you make the term radioactive. Whatever it is, you'll just say anti-something or white nationalist or something. You'll just make that term, you'll make that term radioactive. And usually you do that without pointing to any firm examples in the beginning, right? So that people finally agree. They're like, through repetition and whatnot, you're like, yeah, those are bad people. So you might be saying it yourself, going along with, yeah, those, whatever they are, whatever the term of the day is. And so you make that radioactive. And once it's sufficiently radioactive, now it's a weapon. Now you can just hang that on people that you don't like, right? And so that's an old technique. And for instance, with the anti-Semite, let's say the anti-Semite accusations. Let's look at Netanyahu. His real name is Meliakovsky. He changed his name. He's a reptile, right? His real name was Meliakovsky. His father changed it. And his father actually wrote a book about the Crusades. He doesn't like Christians at all. You're not allowed to proselytize and Jews in Israel, by the way. I mean, you can be deported and all this sorts of stuff, right? And which is interesting. That might be a shocker for a lot of Christians. There's hard rules around that, right? And so the guy down in Argentina, his name's Meliakovsky, same as Meliakovsky and Netanyahu. I mean, are these guys cousins? I don't know, but they have the same family name, right? And but they changed. But look at Netanyahu. He's whiter than I am, literally, and he's talking about anti-Semitism. Like, you're not a Semite. You're genociding Semites in Gaza. You're not a Semite. You're Polish or something, right? You're a European guy.